The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar series, Bluebeam 101. We are on day one, and we will be talking about Markup Basics today. Now, we do have a few moments before the top of the hour, and we have quite a few registered, so I will allow for all the remaining participants to join us before we dive in and get started. For those that have joined a little bit early, welcome. My name is Michael Boatwright. I'm a software training specialist here with Bluebeam Global Services, and I'm going to be your trainer all week in each one of our webinar series for Bluebeam 101. I have a question of the day to get us started off. So while we are waiting for the course to start and for all the rest of the attendees to join us, please go ahead and locate the questions panel in the GoToWebinar panel. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen. And let us know, please tell me, what is your comfort level with Bluebeam Review on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 being the office expert and 1 being a very new user. If you go ahead and type out those answers, those are going to be sent over directly to me and my staff. We greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, as I mentioned, let's give it a few more minutes. We'll try to get started right here at the top of the hour. Once again, thank you all so much for joining us today. It looks like we're getting some more attendees joining us, so welcome everyone that is joining in just now. My name is Michael. I'm the software training specialist that's going to be running through our Bluebeam 101 lecture today. We do plan on getting started right here at the top of the hour. I may just wait a few minutes past the top of the hour because we had quite a few registered, and I just want to make sure that everyone is able to join us. For those that have already joined, I have sent out a question of the day asking, what is your comfortability level with Bluebeam Review on a scale of 1 to 10? If you'd like to answer my question, please send those answers out to the GoToWebinar questions panel. You should see that on the right-hand side of your screen. Go ahead and type out your answer from a scale 1 to 10. What is your comfort level with review? Send those answers on over and we will get started in just a few minutes. Once again, I'm Michael, and thank you so much for joining. And thank you to all those that have been sending out your answers for our question of the day. Do greatly appreciate it. I do still have quite a few participants that are coming in. So even though we are at the top of the hour, I do want to give it just 1 or 2 more minutes before we dive on in and get started. For all of my new attendees that have just joined, welcome to our webinar series, Bluebeam 101. My name is Michael Boatwright, and I'm going to be your software training specialist as we go through Markup Basics. As we wait to get started, please go ahead and send out. For the question of the day, we asked, what is your comfortability level with review on a scale of 1 to 10? If you can, please go ahead and send over your answer in that GoToWebinar questions panel. You're going to find that over on the right-hand side of your screen. So as I mentioned, we'll give it just another minute or two, and then we are going to dive on in and get started. So thank you all so much for joining, and we'll get started shortly. Alrighty, we are 2 minutes past the top of the hour, so I do want to go ahead and dive on in and get started. So welcome everyone to our webinar series, Bluebeam 101. We are on day one of this webinar series on this beautiful Monday, and we are going to be going through Markup Basics. My name is Michael Boatwright. I'm a software training specialist with Bluebeam Global Services, and I'm going to be your trainer throughout this week as we go through each one of our 30-minute lectures in this webinar series. I do want to thank you all so much for joining us today. I always like to talk about in our introduction that all of our webinars this week are designed to help you get just a taste of what is possible in Revu. Each of our courses is taken directly from a portion of our trainings that are available for purchase. So if you are interested in learning more after we conclude these trainings, you can always reach out to us at training@bluebeam.com or to simply send us a message in the questions panel with your information. We'll get your contact and reach out with more information about all the trainings that we offer at the end of this one today. So for day one, before we dive into our agenda, let's talk about our schedule for the week. So you're going to see on the left-hand side of your screen, this is going to be my entire schedule. So over here on Monday, we're going through our PDF Markup Basics today. Tomorrow, we're going to build off our foundational knowledge today and talk more specifically about measurement basics. We'll switch gears on Wednesday and go through some drawing management basics. Thursday, we'll talk about our collaborative software, Studio Basics. And then if you've noticed on Friday, we have a brand new Bluebeam 101 course that we are proud to present called Bluebeam Cloud Basics. This is actually going to be the first time that we're going to be talking about Bluebeam Cloud in Bluebeam 101. So I highly recommend for all of you, whether you've participated in this webinar series before or if this is your first time, to make sure that you can come in and check out our Bluebeam Cloud Basics on Friday. If you are unable to attend, we will also be recording all of these lectures, and we also do host this on a monthly basis. So if you're unable to check us out this month, we will be hosting this again next month as well. Over on the right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see all of our social media links, everything from Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. If you give a follow on any of our social media, you're going to be able to stay up to date with any announcements that Bluebeam has. And more specifically for Bluebeam Global Services, you're going to see the next time that we're hosting Bluebeam 101 as well. So go ahead, if you're not already, give us a follow, give us a like, and you'll be able to stay up to date with all of those announcements. So that is our schedule for the week. That's going to be what we're going over in our webinar series. But since we're talking about PDF Markup Basics today, let's talk a little bit about the agenda that we're going to be talking about. So we're going to be covering these four main topics today. So markup tools is where we're going to start. Markup tools is probably what Bluebeam and Revu are best known for. So I'm going to start there, talk about where we can find our markup tools, and then we're going to place three of our most popular markups directly on a drawing. Now, once we've talked about placing those markup tools, I also want to talk about customizations that are available in Revu. Sometimes it's not enough just to visually put a markup on a drawing. You want to customize the visual properties of that markup, whether it be the color, the line weight, a hatch pattern, and so on. So we're going to talk about those customizations that are available in the Properties Toolbar. Once we've worked through those markup tools, we've placed them, we've customized them in the Properties Toolbar, the very last thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to save them in the tool chest. The tool chest is going to allow us to save all of our customized markups as we work within Revu, and then reuse those customized markups on any current project or future projects down the line as well. So it's kind of a ABC, a 1, 2, 3 process. We place our markups, we customize them, and then we save them in the tool chest. The very last thing that we'll talk about today is going to be our markups list. So every markup that we place on our drawing is being tracked for us in what we call the markups list. It's essentially a unique tool specific to Revu, allowing every markup to be easily communicated along with the team, and it'll also allow you to export all the information being saved each and every time you place a markup on a drawing. So that's going to be our agenda. Let's go ahead and dive on into our software. I'm going to close out of my PowerPoint here. And then let's start talking about working with our markup tools. Now, before I do, a new thing that we're also going to be talking about, I'm going to be working in our latest and greatest software throughout each one of our webinars. You're going to notice today I'm working in Revu 21. So yes, Revu 21 is available and live. If you do want a lot of information about Revu 21, we do have a lot of great info at bluebeam.com at our store as well. But for today, I do want to focus on one specific aspect, one big change between Revu 21 and all of our earlier versions of Revu. And that's going to be the sign-on process. So if you see, I already have my document that's opened up here in Revu. I have some toolbars up here in the top where I'll be accessing some of my markups. but you'll notice that all of my tools are currently grayed out. I don't have access to any of these tools so far. And the reason being is that I haven't actually signed in yet. All I've simply done is opened up Revu 21 on my computer, but I haven't signed into my account. So essentially, first thing I need to do, new to Revu 21, is sign in order to get access to the tools that are included in my package. So I'm going to sign in up here in the top right-hand corner by selecting this option up here. It's going to prompt me, ask me to type in my email address. If I need to create a brand new account, I can also do so from right here. But in this case, since I already have an account, I'm going to go ahead, get my email address. Oops, excuse me, I got to get that typed in. There we are. And then I'm just going to go ahead and copy that because I know I'll be prompted one more time. And I'm going to sign into my Bluebeam account. Now, once that's signed in, I'm going to notice that I see my username up here at the top. So there's my email address. And notice that I now have access to all of my markup tools that are available here. So essentially, new to Revu 21, I can securely access my work anywhere on any device that has Revu installed. I no longer have to worry about bringing my exact device with my seed Revu with me everywhere I go. Instead, anywhere that I'm working, as long as I have access to a device that has Revu installed on the machine, the only thing that I need to do in order to begin my work is to come up here to the top and sign in with my email address in my account. And that is Revu 21 specific. If I select on my username up here at the top, we can also see, so I have my username here. I have the sign out feature if maybe one of my coworkers needs to use this machine and they need to sign into their account. Then I also can see what current package I'm working with and the region that I'm working in as well, all up here in that top right-hand corner. So that's all I'm going to go through as far as Revu 21. If you do have additional questions, I highly recommend checking out our website at bluebeam.com. But let's go ahead, let's dive into some markup tools. So I'm going to go ahead, let's access some markup tools and begin placing them on our drawing. Now, regardless of what version of Revu we're working in, there's a few different ways that we can access markup tools. The first way is going to be up here at the top. It's going to be with these toolbars. The great thing about toolbars is that they allow me one-click access to markups, so I can select on the icon that represents the markup, give it a left click, and then place that markup directly on my drawing. And then I can also customize my toolbars, their locations, what tools that I see, all available through the profile that I'm working in. So there's a lot of customizations available for toolbars, but essentially they're going to give me that one-click access to markups based on the icon that I select. A few other options, maybe I'm a new user to Revu and I don't have access to these toolbars, or I don't see the exact tool that I want to utilize, or maybe just simply I haven't memorized what each one of these icons represent. Another great way that you can access the markup tools available in Revu is to select on this tools menu up here at the top. I'm going to go ahead and give that a left click, hover down here to where it says markup, and you're going to notice that I have a whole markup menu available for me. Each one of these items represents a markup tool, and I get a little bit of information up here. I get an icon that represents the markup tool. I have the title of the markup tool, and then I have my third and kind of final way to access these markups. Over here on the right, I can see each markup is also assigned a keyboard shortcut. So if I'm a more advanced user and I want immediate access to the markup I'm utilizing, I can also memorize the associated keyboard shortcut for these markups as well. So it's going to be the three different ways that we can access those markup tools. For today, I'm going to use our toolbars that we have up here at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on my drawing really quickly. And the first markup tool I'm going to utilize is going to be with our break room. So for our break room, I very quickly just want to draw a cloud over this break room. I have a question about whether or not we have enough smoke detectors in this break room. So I'm going to go ahead, let me draw a cloud very quickly to represent that question on my drawing. So I'm going to come back up here to my toolbar. I'm going to select on that cloud icon up here at the top. Give that a left click. I'll know that it's selected because it has this blue highlight now. And I'll also notice that as I hover back over my drawing, I can see that crosshair and that cloud icon in the bottom right-hand corner, just indicating to me that I'm now ready to draw this cloud. So I'll start up here in the top left-hand corner where I want my cloud to start. I'm going to hold a left click down, and then I'm just going to click and drag. Notice as I click and drag, I'm creating a rectangle around that break room. Once I've reached the bottom right-hand corner of where I want my cloud to end, I'm just going to go ahead and let go of that left click. And you're going to see that cloud has been immediately placed for me. So very simply, I can use that click and drag method to create my cloud. It's going to be that perfect rectangle, and now I can continue my work. You'll also notice that once the cloud is placed, I do have access to these yellow dots. Each one of these represents a different control point, and they'll essentially allow me to manipulate the size and shape of the markup once it's already been placed. So maybe I want to make these two corners touch here. All I need to do is kind of click and drag. I can move this control point around and bring it a little bit closer to my break room. So I'm just going to kind of click and drag and bring them a little bit closer. So that looks great so far. So I've placed my cloud. I'm going to go ahead and place some additional markups before we continue. So let's zoom out here. I'm going to kind of pan over to these three pieces of equipment. So for each one of these three pieces of equipment, I have an issue because none of them have been labeled. So on the next revision of this sheet, I want to make sure that we have all three pieces of equipment that are represented by these boxes labeled on the drawing. So I'm going to go ahead, let's create a markup for that workflow as well. I'll come back up to my toolbar. I'm going to find the markup icon representing the callout tool. And then just like our cloud, I'm going to give that a single left click. Come back down over my drawing. I have that crosshair once again. And then I'm again placing my callout. Now we here at training, we call the callout a two-click tool because essentially it takes two left clicks to place it. The first left click on my mouse is going to be where an arrow will begin. So it's going to point out a specific region or equipment on my drawing. In this case, it'll be this first box here. I'm going to place my first left click up here in the top left-hand corner of that. Giving that a first left click with my mouse, as I move away, notice that arrow is now pointing in this exact region. And now my second click for this tool is going to place this attached caption box. So it's attached to this line. Notice I can move around with my mouse, kind of position it exactly where I want it. And then once I like its positioning, I'm going to have a second left click right here. And that's going to place my caption attached. Now I have the option, I can go ahead and begin typing out my caption. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and say label equipment. And then I can click escape on my keyboard to place that markup. So that looks great so far. Notice I still have my control point, so I can go ahead and click and drag if I want to kind of remove this extra space here. Move my caption around a little bit as well. I can hold a left click in the center. Now, I know for a lot of our customers and a lot of the members on my team, I work with some very literal people. So if I were to just kind of conclude the markup here and can move on, then I know on my next revision, more than likely, only this single piece of equipment will be labeled here, not all three that are represented by these boxes. So I want to go ahead, I want to create additional arrows to make sure that everyone knows that we're labeling not just this one piece of equipment here, but all three that are located on my drawing. Now we do see a lot of customers, they'll click on the arrow icon up here, create a markup, and kind of click and attach as they go through, just making sure that the arrow is kind of as close as possible to the callout. Now this is something that I wouldn't recommend doing, and the reason being is that you're essentially, when selecting this option up here, creating additional markups. And with those additional markups, with those additional arrows, you're going to have to go back when we change the properties. You're going to have to change the properties of both of those arrows as well. And they're also being tracked as separate markups in the markups list. So instead of doing that extra work, instead of creating additional markups to create my additional arrows, instead I'm going to come back to my callout. I'm going to left click on my callout. And then I'm going to right click on one of these control points. So this little yellow dot here, I'm just going to right click. It's going to open up this markup menu for me. And then here, notice I have an option to add a leader line. So I can go ahead, I can add an additional leader line directly from here that's already attached to my callout. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a single left click. Notice I now have that line attached. And now with this arrow, I'm just going to left click one more time right here and place it so it's pointing at that second piece of equipment. Now I can continue, I can add an additional leader line just by right clicking on this yellow icon here, selecting on add leader, and then once again attaching it here. You'll also notice that I can move. As I move my mouse, I can jump my arrow around the callout. So I kind of have this 360-degree rotation to add this line. It automatically snaps to these different control points as I move it around. In this case, I'm going to keep it about right here. I'm just going to left click one more time. And now I've created my callout with those additional leader lines. So they're all still a part of that one markup. Now when I go back to change these visual properties, I don't have to worry about changing additional lines or additional arrows as I work. So that looks fantastic so far. I'm going to place one more of our most popular markups. I'm going to do so right over here on this guardrail. So this is essentially a copy of one of our airport projects. You can see I have a jet bridge right here. And in the case of this particular jet bridge, our guardrail that's located right here is not up to code. So I essentially kind of want to highlight this entire structure from the start down here at the bottom all the way up here to the top. Well, I know that my highlighter tool over here is a great tool to utilize, but it's not really going to help me because I have to kind of click and drag, and I'm not really good with my mouse, so it's going to be very, very sloppy. So instead of utilizing the highlighter tool, I'm going to use our Polyline tool for kind of the same exact work. So I'm going to find my Polyline tool. It's going to be located up here on the toolbar. I'm going to give that polyline a single left click. And then I want to start my line all the way down here at the very, very bottom of that guardrail on the jet bridge. So I'm going to give this a single click first. This is going to start my polyline. So with a left click, now that I've placed my first point, I'll call that point A. As I move my line around and I move my mouse, notice that it's looking to extend this line segment to create point B attached. So I'm going to create my first line segment. I'm going to stop it about right here. So I'm going to give this a single left click. And notice that it's looking to extend even further. So the great thing about the polyline is you're essentially creating multiple line segments all attached to each other. So it looks great so far. I'm going to finish it up right here with point D, and then double click all the way up here at the top to finish my polyline. If I forget to double click up here as well and it looks to extend further, I can also click enter on my keyboard, and that'll create my polyline and finish that for me. So that looks great so far. Notice I do need an arced line here in the center. So to create an arced line with this middle line segment, once again, all we need to do is find the line segment that we're looking to create that arc, right click, and select on the option convert to arc. It's going to give me these additional control points. It's going to convert only that middle line segment to an arc. And then from there, I can kind of click and drag and move them around as I need to. So just like any other control point, I'm just clicking and dragging it to reshape and reform my line to match my guardrail. So that looks fantastic so far as well, and that's going to be the last markup that I'm going to place. So we have our three different markups here. We have our cloud, we have a callout, and we have a polyline. Now, each one of them represented a different workflow, but notice that as I've placed them, they all have the same exact color, same exact line weight. They all look exactly the same. So I want to start changing some of the visual properties of my lines and of my markups to kind of differentiate them from each other directly on my drawing. In order to change their visual properties, the first thing that I need to do is I need to select the markups. So I'm going to start over here with my callout. I'm going to kind of zoom in here. And in order to select the callout, I'm just going to give it a left click. When it's selected, I know that it's selected because I can see the control points for the markup. And once it's selected, I'll also see I have a Properties Toolbar up here at the top. And that's going to actually give me access to all of my different markup properties. Now, this toolbar up here is a dynamic toolbar. You'll notice that if I select, let's say I deselect my markup, I click escape or I click some empty space here, my properties toolbar is still present, but instead of showing me the properties for the markup, it's instead just giving me the name of my document and the pages that I'm working with. So it changes based on what you have selected on the drawing. Once again, if I select my markup, my properties toolbar is going to change one more time, and it's going to show me all those properties I can change for my markup. So I want to go ahead, let's start changing some of these visual properties. Now I'm going to start all the way over here on the left-hand side. I'm going to click this drop down here for my callout, and I want to change the title or the subject of my markup. Its default right now is set at callout. Now this is something that we emphasize, very important to all of our customers that work with markup tools, is when you are changing the properties of your markup, always start with the subject. Now the subject is essentially a customizable text input, kind of like a title for the markup to categorize and sort it in the markups list. We'll look at the markups list in just a little bit, but you'll notice that if I open it up down here, notice that I have columns in my markups list that kind of organize all of this information as I place my markups. Notice that my primary or my first column is going to be titled subject, and all of my markup subjects are being tracked here. So I have my clouds, my callouts, and my polylines. Well, instead of organizing my markups that way and utilizing their subjects as a default of just the type of markup they are, whether they're a callout or a polyline or a cloud, I want to customize my subject. That way it's a little bit easier for me to understand and sort my markups in that list. So once again, if I click up down here and I click that drop down, I'm going to change this subject line. And instead of calling this a call out, I want to call this something it's related to. So in this case, it's a change that I want to make on my drawing. So this reflects a change I wanted to make by labeling these three pieces of equipment. So my subject line will be change. From there, I can change the rest of my visual properties. So I'm going to go ahead, just click on these individual icons. In this case, my line color, I'll change that over to a dark green. As I scroll down, I can change the line opacity or the line style, but in this case, I'm just going to change my line weight, bring that up to 1 point. Notice I have a lot of different options. I can change my lined ends or add a fill color. So for our fill color, let's go ahead and use a pastel pea green. And then I'm going to kind of briefly scroll through these very quickly. And the last thing that I want to change is my font color, and I'll have that match with a dark green. So that looks great so far. So my markup now has those visual properties changed. It has that subject line that's been changed. And now I can kind of differentiate it on my drawing and in my markups list from the rest of my markups. I'll continue doing just that. So once again, I'm going to find a different markup, select it with a left click, That way that Properties Toolbar will reflect those properties I can change. Starting over here on the left, I'll click this drop down and start with my subject once again. Now for the subject of this markup, of course, I don't want it to be cloud. I want to categorize it into its own category as well. Well, this was a question that I had about the smoke detectors in our break room. So I'm going to go ahead, delete out that subject of cloud, and type out the subject of question. Once that subject's changed, now I'm free. I can start creating some visual properties to match. So starting with my line color over here, let's go ahead and utilize a magenta red. And then I'll scroll through here. I can change my line style once again, or my cloud style. But in this case, I'm just going to add a simple fill color. We'll use a pastel magenta. And I'm also going to want to add a highlight as well. Notice that the reason being is that when I add a fill color, the fill is actually going to cover up all of my PDF content underneath my markup. I can no longer see my break room. I'm missing some grid lines, my title block. All that stuff has now been covered by this large fill color. Now I can change the fill opacity and soften that fill color, or I can simply click on this highlight option here as well. Notice that when I select that highlight, it doesn't affect the color at all. All it does is bring forward all of that PDF content. That break room title is now visible. I can see those grid lines, these walls, all on my drawing. So I've customized my second markup here. That looks great so far as well. I'm going to conclude and finish up with our polyline over here at the top. Once again, in order to finish with this polyline and change those visual properties, I give it a single left click, start up here in the Properties Toolbar, and then begin changes with the subject line. Now my polyline, that's going to be my last subject I'm going to customize. I'll create its own category as well, and in this case, I'm going to call it an issue, because this was an issue that we had with a guardrail on our jet bridge. I'll also go ahead, I'm going to start on our polyline. Let's change our line color. In this case, I'm going to use a pastel cyan line color, and then I want to increase our line weight as well. So essentially, I'm going to bring this up. Notice that I can use these up or down arrows to click and move up my line weight. Or I can also simply delete out this text, type out the number that I want. In this case, it'll be 8. And it's going to automatically jump me to that line weight of 8 point. You can see it reflected on my drawing as well. Now notice that I've covered up the entire guardrail section of that ramp here now with that polyline. But once again, just like our cloud, we have this highlight option available right here. So by giving this a single left click, notice I can see that line work, and I've essentially kind of transformed my polyline into a highlight. It's now highlighting this entire guardrail from the top over here all the way down to the bottom. I created that blue cyan for my fill color, and just by clicking this option here, I can now see those lines once again. So that original workflow where I wanted to highlight this entire guardrail has now been accomplished. So now these look great so far. So now I have these 3 different markups. They're all on my drawing. They represent different workflows, and they also have different associations. They have different subjects and different visual properties. Now this looks great so far. Now I want to go ahead and save these. That way I can reuse them over and over as I continue working on this drawing. Maybe I have other guardrails I need to highlight or other questions that I want to reflect as clouds. I don't want to have to go through the trouble of creating a markup, changing the properties, and going through that all over again. It's going to be very time consuming. It's not going to save me a lot of time. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize the tool chest panel. Now the tool chest panel for me is located over here on the left-hand side of my screen. It's represented by this single icon. Now in order to open up this panel, I'm just going to give it a left click. And then with any of my panels, I can click this blue line here, kind of where that panel ends. And I can click and drag to kind of move it so I can see more of the information inside, make it a little easier for me to navigate within it. If I'm having difficulty seeing these icons as well, I can actually use my slider bar down here, kind of click and drag, just so I can see the icons a little bit larger in each one of my tool sets as well. Now I'm going to go ahead. You may notice if you open up your tool chest, you may see a lot of our default tool sets available. They're already color coordinated for you, and I highly recommend if you haven't utilized tool sets before to kind of give them a try to understand how to utilize those tools. In my case, I've actually turned them all off. I've hidden them from my view so you won't see them on my screen. If you want to know how to do that, all you need to do is click this drop down arrow right here. And you can see I've just simply turned off all of these defaults. To turn them back on, I give them a left click. You're going to see that check mark next to it, and you're also going to see it appear here as well. And then to hide, once again, just give it a left click, and it'll disappear. Now in this case, I want to go ahead, I want to manage my tool sets and add a brand new one from scratch that I can save all of my markup tools in. So I'm going to select on this option to manage tool sets. And then in this dialog here, I'm going to go ahead and select on add and add a brand new one. I'm just going to call this my airport project toolset. I'll select OK from there. Revu is going to prompt me to ask me where to save it. I'm just going to go ahead and select on save. That way it's saved on my computer and in my review. And then I'm going to select OK. So now I have my tool set available here. Notice that it's currently empty. So now that we've created it, I need to save my tools in that tool set. So now there's 3 different ways to save these tools. The fastest way is that I can find this recent tools tool set where it shows me all the most recent tools I've utilized. I can hover over an icon and simply click and drag. As I click and drag that icon, notice it's still present here in my recent tools, and it's now been duplicated and saved under my airport project tool set. And that's going to be my Polyline. So now I can easily reuse it with a single click of that icon. Another option that I do have, maybe I cleared my recent tools or I don't see the icon, is I can zoom in, right click on a markup, and then as I right click on that markup, you'll notice in this menu where we added our leader lines, you have the option to add to tool chest, and then you can click on the tool chest and tool set you want to add it to. So there's my icon. I've now went ahead and saved that with a right click as well. And then my third and final option, if I select a markup with a left click, in my Properties Toolbar where we changed all those visual properties, I can actually scroll all the way over here on the right, click on that drop down, and I also have an option to add to tool chest. So there's 3 different ways to save these markups. No one way is better than the other. It's all a matter of personal preference. But once they are saved, once I have all of my markup tools saved here in my tool set, I can now reuse them. I don't have to go through the process of creating a new cloud with the same visual properties and same subject line. I don't have to do the same with my callout or my polyline. I now have them saved and I can reuse them. So let's scroll down here to my car rental offices and let's reuse one of these markups. So in this case, I'm going to use my cloud icon here. I'm going to give that a single left click. And as I give it a left click, I'm going to hover over my drawing and place it. Now you will notice that as I've placed this markup, it has the exact same size and shape as my original markup over here at the top. Well, that's really not going to do me much good. My car rental offices are a completely different size and shape. So even though I want the cloud to retain its visual properties and I want it to retain its subject, I do want to manipulate its size and shape. Now, it's important to note that when we do save our markups in our tool sets, there's 2 different modes that we can reuse them in. We can reuse them in properties mode and we can reuse them in drawing mode. We can see an example of drawing mode right now. This is an example of drawing mode. It retains a markup that is reused in drawing mode, will retain all visual properties, the exact same size, the exact same shape. Think about it as kind of a copy and paste of the markup you saved. Now that's essentially drawing mode. If I delete this, I can switch the markup to properties mode, which I can do so by finding the icon for the markup and simply double clicking it with my mouse. Notice that when I double click, it's going to change this icon. And with that icon changed, now that it's in properties mode, I can bring it back over my drawing. I have this crosshair and that icon of a cloud, and I can essentially redraw my cloud now. So I'll start over here. I'm going to kind of click individual points with a single left click. Notice that I'm creating a line work where my cloud will exist. So my cloud should have the same exact size and shape as each one of these individual clicks. When I'm ready to close my cloud and connect this point here to this point here, I'm just going to simply double click. And now I've created my shape. So notice that in properties mode, it allows me to change that size and the shape, but it's going to retain all the visual properties and it's going to retain that subject line. So now I don't have to go through and redo all of that work. Instead, it's now here present for me. It looks just like our cloud over here at the top of the break room, representing a question in our car rental offices as well. So that's going to be how we can reuse and save tools within the tool chest. The very last thing that I want to do today, I'm going to go ahead and close out of here, give that a left click, and open up our markups list so we can briefly talk about our markups list and how to export our summary. So I have my markups list open here. Notice that with my subjects now aligned, I can now navigate through my drawing based on the changes that we need to make, the issues that we have, and the questions reflected in each one of these markups. I can select on each one of these with a left click, and notice that they're going to jump me to those exact markups and select them on my drawing. So I can use this as a navigation tool. I can also change how all of this information is being sorted. So right now, everything's being sorted by subject line. But if I go over here to my date, and let's say I select on my date column and give that a left click, notice I can now reflect everything by the most recent markup created and the last markup created as well. And I even have a column over here for status, which I can use as a communication tool. If I kind of click and drag this icon over, I'm going to make this a little bit larger. And let's say in the case of this particular markup over here, this change that we needed to make to label equipment. As someone that's working on this project and has access to this document, I can also change the status of this markup. I can do so by double clicking in the column right here. So I'm going to do so and double click. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select on the option of accepted. So I've essentially accepted this work. You can see that that status is accept as accepted, the username myself in Boatwright, and the date and time that it was accepted as well. Once I've completed that work, I can now add a new status. I can once again double click in that column, select on the option of completed, and notice that those status will stack on top of each other. Now I can see exactly when it was accepted, my username, and when it was completed as well. One of the last things that I can do is I can also utilize the filter list. If I wanted to filter out certain information, I could select on this icon and then select a particular filter. So in this case, maybe I just want to see all of the questions that are on my drawing. I can select on that filter here, select on question. Notice that it'll filter out this information in my markups list. Now I only see my questions. And it also visually filters out all of my markups as well. So it will gray out any markup that doesn't have that subject line of question. The only markups that I can really see with those visual properties are my question markups. So another option that I have in my markups list is to simply filter out the information that I need to see. I can turn off my filters as well by giving it a left click. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is run a PDF report. So let's go ahead, let's click on our export summary here, and let's export all of this information into a PDF. In order to do so, I'm going to go ahead and select on my summary report, select on PDF summary. And then from there, you're going to see I have a lot of different options when it comes to customizing the properties of my summary report. Under my columns tab right here, I can turn off or on columns and information that I want to see. So let's say in this case, I don't need to see the color, the layer, or the spaces. I don't need this information kind of itemized for me on my summary. So I'm going to deselect those. I can also choose to filter and sort information. So I can sort by a particular subject or filter them out. And I can change how it's sorted down here as well. And then I can also finally change that output. So under the output for my PDF summary, I'm going to go ahead and make sure this is exporting as a PDF. I'm going to append and hyperlink this report to my current PDF. And I want to make sure that it's opened after I create it so we can see exactly what it looks like. So now I've customized my summary report. I've essentially taken the information that I want to see out of this markups list, and I'm now pushing it out as a brand new report by selecting OK right here. And then now with my brand new PDF markup summary report, notice that everything is still organized by subject, so I have all of my changes, my issues, and questions all grouped together. As I zoom in as well, because I added this as an extra page onto my existing document, all of these thumbnails are also hyperlinked. So anyone that's reviewing this report, maybe someone that's tackling all of the changes on this project, if they have a question about where is this markup exactly located on the drawing, all they need to do is left click on that thumbnail, and it's automatically going to jump them over to where that is on the drawing. So now all of these are hyperlinked, and you can use this as a navigation tool to navigate around those drawings as well. So that's how to export all of that information out as a markup summary from your markups list. And that will conclude our webinar today. So I do want to thank everyone so much for joining me. I'm going to go ahead, hop over to my last slide here, and just do a very quick conclusion. So I do once again want to thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope that you were able to take away something new about Revu. And then as I mentioned at the very beginning of this webinar, this was just a small portion of our training that is currently available for purchase. So if you're looking to get a group or department up to speed on Revu, we have live trainers that can walk you through the different workflows of Revu, have dedicated time to practice important features, and give you a chance to ask questions throughout the course. So if that's something that you're looking for or could benefit from, please reach out to us at training@bluebeam.com, or you can also find the resources banner at bluebeam.com as well. If you're an individual and you're also looking for more training on Revu, our Bluebeam University is also a great option to get up to speed. Bluebeam University is free for Revu 21 users, but if you are not a subscription user and would like to try it out, keep an eye out for the GoToWebinar email. I'm going to go ahead and send that email after our webinar today. You'll receive an access code that's going to give you access to Bluebeam University until the end of the year. So you as an individual user are going to get that, so make sure you keep an eye out in your email. We also just launched our new certification, Bluebeam Certified Professional, which you can find more information on through Bluebeam University as well. Lastly, I'm going to keep the webinar open for just another minute or so to allow for any remaining questions or wrap up any existing conversations that are happening in the questions window. With that email, you're also going to receive a 3-survey questionnaire once you close out of this webinar. I would greatly appreciate for you to take your time to fill that out. Just give us some feedback on how it went today. So once again, thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope that you're able to join tomorrow as we go through measurement basics. Otherwise, I've been Michael Boatwright. Thank you all so much for joining.